In one of the more eventful Monaco Grand Prix in recent memory, it ended up with Sergio Perez winning his first ever Monaco Grand Prix and becoming the most successful Mexican Formula One driver in terms of winning. And once again, Ferrari has messed up. This year, they have had 3 home races technically back at Imola. They had their home race, Ferrari's home race in Italy, and they didn't mess up, but it was a Red Bull 1-2, which was disappointing for them considering they have a championship contending car. Then last week at Spain, they had a shot at winning with Leclerc, and his car broke down. Sainz had his own issues spinning out into the gravel after a poor start, and it ended up in another Red Bull 1-2, and today it looked like Ferrari's day. 1-2 at Monaco, where it's almost impossible to pass, but rain came, and it was the strategy this time that messed up for Ferrari, and it resulted in a double Red Bull podium and a Red Bull victory. And Charles Leclerc, he finally finished his home race! How about that? But he finishes 4th, and he had a race-winning car. So it ends up being actually a very disappointing day for Leclerc. Let's go through this day. Race was supposed to start at 8 a.m. U.S. time, where I am. I don't know what time that is over in Monaco. But, yeah, rain came, and for some reason they delayed the start. It wasn't even raining that heavily, but it was raining. They wanted to give teams time to switch tires and other things, and so the teams got that time, and they didn't start the race until 8:15. And, then they ran 1 lap behind the safety car. It started pouring down rain to the point where you couldn't see, so they had to sit on the pit lane for about an hour. Then they finally got the race started, and everyone was on the full wet tires, and it was a 2-hour window. You got 2 hours to complete this race until 11 a.m. here time once again. And, so during this full wet period, we saw where the strategy played into Red Bull's hands. Leclerc was leading, Sainz was 2nd, Perez 3rd, Verstappen 4th, and not much was happening. Leclerc had stretched his lead out to 4 or 5 seconds. Sainz was holding off Perez by about a second, maybe 2 seconds, and then it was about the same gap from Perez to Verstappen. And the first one to come into the pits out of those 4, of course, we had seen others like Gasly, Vettel, I think Albon, and some others pit for the intermediates, which are kind of the, I guess, less wet tires. You know, they're still wet tires, but they're not as extreme or for as extreme of conditions. And they had all come in, but Perez, out of those top 4, was the first to come down pit road and get himself those intermediate tires, and it played to his advantage. Verstappen followed suit, Sainz followed suit, but Leclerc followed suit, and Perez ended up getting the lead through all of this. Sainz tried to stay out as long as he could, but he eventually had to pit, of course, but he did not pit for the intermediates. I stand corrected from what I just said. He did not pit for the intermediates. He waited about 5 to 10 laps afterwards, and he had a 2-second lead over Perez. But, And then Sainz and Leclerc, they double boxed, or whatever it's called, double stacked, and they pitted first for the fresh, slick tires because the track had finally dried up. And it was the overcut that actually worked. Perez was in the lead, and it ended up with Perez back in the lead after they went and got the fresh tires. And it was Perez first, Sainz second, Verstappen third, Leclerc fourth. So just to kind of wrap this up, prior to the pit stops for the intermediate tires, we went Leclerc first, Sainz second, Perez third, Verstappen fourth. After that, Perez went from third to first. Sainz stayed in second. Verstappen went from fourth to third. Leclerc had the worst of it, went from first to fourth. Absolutely horrendous. The worst possible situation for Leclerc. He had stopped for the intermediate tires and then very soon after had pit for the slicks, and they pitted at the wrong time. Pitted after Perez, so Perez had gotten a lap in on those intermediates, a lot more than Leclerc, so he was able to gain some time there, a significant amount of time actually. And then, of course, with the overcut on the slick tires, which that basically screwed Leclerc because, once again, it's virtually impossible to pass at Monaco. The top 4 were all within 2.5 seconds at one point in that final few lap period. In fact, they all finished within 3 seconds of each other, the top 4. You know, even with the DRS, it was very hard to pass regularly, but with the water, the standing water, it's still being wet on the slicks. It's still hard to pass. Sainz made one attempt to pass Perez on the outside, but it was wet, and he literally had the wheel like he had the wheel like this. Like, he had spun the tires so much because of how wet it was. But yeah, Sergio Perez, a very emotional victory. He was very emotional up on the podium as expected. A Monaco Grand Prix win is huge for Formula One. I really hope they keep this race on the calendar. It's one of the most iconic races in Formula One, despite how boring it may be and how much lack of passing there is. It's still one of the most iconic races in Formula One. And Perez, a lot of emotion up there on the podium. He now has 3 career wins. Entering the 2020 season, it was 0, and it was a very uncertain future. Perez's career, he's on, year 10 or 11 in Formula One, and it has been an up-and-down career. He started off at Sauber, had some really good performances there, went to McLaren for a year, and, McLaren at the time was a really good team, a championship-contending team, but that was the time that McLaren, their downfall kind of began. And Perez got booted out for Kevin Magnussen, and then from there on, he was at Force India / Racing Point. So Perez, during that time at Force India, got some podiums, had some really good performances, and then finally, in his last year with Racing Point, with an uncertain future, he had lost his contract, he had lost his seat to Sebastian Vettel, and, he didn't know what he was going to be doing in 2021. He goes out and wins the Secure Grand Prix at the end of 2020 to kind of show, hey, I'm still a really good driver. I'm here to stay. I want to be competitive. And Red Bull saw that, and they picked up Sergio Perez. Last year, Perez got a lot of podiums. He got himself a win at Azerbaijan, helped Max Verstappen win the 2021 Drivers' Championship, especially in that last race at Abu Dhabi, by holding Hamilton up early in the race. And then this year, Perez is in the title fight. It's a 3-way title fight right now. Verstappen has 126 points. Verstappen has 125 points. Leclerc has 116 points. Sergio Perez has 110 points. He's only 16 or 15 points behind his teammate. That's pretty impressive. This is the guy who's supposed to be the Red Bull number 2. This is the guy they had team orders for last week. He comes in and wins this week, and he's in the title fight. So we talked about those team orders last week and how Perez, he wasn't out of the title last week, and how we thought that was a little bit odd that they called the team orders so early in the season. Perez is in this thing right now. I don't know if he can keep up with it. I don't know if he can stay with Verstappen and Leclerc, but he's shown speed this year. He's probably qualified the best he's qualified, at least in the Red Bull. He's got a pole. He got his first career pole at Saudi Arabia. And now he's got himself a win on the season. A very, very good performance. He was better than Verstappen all weekend long, honestly. Faster in practices, faster in qualifying. Heck, he crashed it in qualifying. I forgot about that. And he recovers to come back and win the Monaco Grand Prix. Let's look at the results of this race. Sergio Perez gets his first ever win at Monaco, his 3rd of his career. Closes in on the championship, with the championship leader finishing 3rd and the championship runner-up as of now finishing in 4th. Perez gains a good chunk of points, and he is in that title fight. He is within a race of the title leader, Max Verstappen, his teammate. So this could get interesting. If it could truly stay this close between the top 3, I don't think it will, but just the thought of that's very intriguing. And if Mercedes can kind of pick it up a little bit and get George Russell in there, if Lewis Hamilton can have an insane second half of the season, I mean, it's been a fun year so far with Verstappen and Leclerc, but throw Perez in there, maybe throw Russell in there. This could get very interesting, very fun, very quickly. Carlos Sainz, another second place finish, back-to-back runner-up finishes in the Monaco Grand Prix. He has seemed to do very well at this track, and the Ferrari car last year made up for the disappointment of Leclerc crashing out in qualifying and not starting. This year makes up for the disappointment of Leclerc losing the lead due to Ferrari's brain. And finishes second. He was so close. He looked to be faster than Perez. The tires looked much better at the end, but it's so hard to pass at Monaco. Almost impossible. And Sainz has to settle for second. Of course, this race did not go the distance. It only went 62 laps. Full points were rewarded because they went more than 3/4 of the race. 3rd place, Max Verstappen. The first time when he has finished a race, it has not been the top 2 since Hungary of last year. Yeah, and this is the first time he's finished a race this year that he hasn't won, but still a podium, a really good result for him, and he finishes ahead of his main title rival, Charles Leclerc, but, of course, his teammate gets the win. So great day for Red Bull in terms of the Constructors' Championships, a 1-3. I don't know who got the fastest lap at the end there, but, yeah. Anyways, 4th place, Charles Leclerc. Leclerc was on pole. He was leading by a good margin. And the pit strategy bit him. The Ferrari pit wall gets a bad rap, and they get memed because of this, and they make dumb decisions, and they got it again. They deserve it again. Yeah, they messed up. Yeah, you got to be the first one to pit on the intermediates coming off of the full wets, just because that first out lap is so much more significant. You gain so much time there. And it showed, and then they pit him a second time. Leclerc was screaming on the radio. He said a couple bad words and then said, why, what are we doing? We have lost this race. I have no words is what he said after the race. So he finally finishes home race, but very disappointing result. George Russell continues his top 5 streak. He has been very impressive in the Mercedes this year. I had my doubts coming into the year that he'd be able to keep up with Lewis Hamilton, but he's looking very good this year. 5th place, another top 5. 6th place, Lando Norris. 7th place, Fernando Alonso. He was holding up the field there at the end. Like, there was literally on the mini-map from 6th or 7th to 18th was all, like, right there clumped together because Alonso was backing off and he was saving his tires. And then I think he might have gotten the fastest lap because he was freaking flying at the end. He finishes 7th. 8th place, Lewis Hamilton. 9th place, Valtteri Bottas back in the points for the Alfa Romeo. 10th place, Sebastian Vettel back in the point for Aston Martin. 11th place, Pierre Gasly. 12th, Esteban Ocon. Ocon was in 9th place, but got a 5-second penalty after contact with Lewis Hamilton earlier in the race. 13th, Daniel Ricciardo. Struggle of a weekend for him. 14th, Lance Stroll. 15th, Nicholas Latifi. This is the second straight week he has beat Albon. He was ahead of Albon on track before Albon retired. 16th, Zhou Guanyu. He had a heck of a save. Like, his nose was pointing at the side pod of Yuki Tsunoda coming out of the tunnel onto that chicane. And, dude, he was pointing at it, and he straightened that thing up. He straightened it up, did not crash, did not hit any walls. 17th, Yuki Tsunoda. 18th, Alex Albon did not finish, had a mechanical problem. 19th, Mick Schumacher. Terrible crash for him. The car was in 2. Hopefully he's all right. 20th, Kevin Magnussen had a mechanical failure prior to Mick's crash. But that is your Monaco Grand Prix recap review thingy. We got to watch the Indianapolis 500 now. I am rooting for Jimmy Johnson, former NASCAR driver. And then tonight we got the Coca-Cola 600. Honestly, one of the more entertaining Monaco races just because of that rain factor and the strategy and the tire difference. But other than that, you know, still almost impossible to pass. We saw Gasly make some passes. He was the first one on the intermediates on the guys with wet. So still not the greatest race. But for a Monaco race, not bad. But congratulations to Sergio Perez. Big win for him. But yeah, if you like this video, leave a like, subscribe. Share the channel, all that stuff. We'll talk about NASCAR and IndyCar.